Ladies and gentlemen, with 2023 winding down and 2024 on the horizon, I have my top 5 predictions for 2024 and what the future holds for Marvel Future Fight. I always love to make these kinds of videos because then I get to look back and see how wrong I was year after year after year. So first up, we're going to talk about a group of characters which actually are not featured here, who I think are going to see a big group update in 2024. And for that, I have to go to some characters that I have in tier forward, like Captain America, and some characters that I have tier forward, like Black Widow, like Hulk. Are you getting the picture so far? Potentially Thor. I'm talking about the OG Avengers. Along with characters like Hawkeye, I do expect the OG Avengers to get something next year. I expect an OG Avengers update for a couple of reasons. One, as a lot of people have pointed out, the Team Up collection is highlighting specific groups. And one of the most popular, if not the most popular specific group these days is Avengers. And you have Cap, you have Iron Man, you have Hulk, Thor, etc. All of those characters would be grouped together, and that would make it probably the most or one of the most valuable Team Up collections. Not to mention, a lot of those characters now are over a year old in their tier 4s, right? Over a year old for Thor, for Captain America, well over a year. We're talking a year and a half, almost 2 years for Black Widow and Iron Man, who were the first tier 4s introduced. So you actually have a lot of longevity in these characters that is starting to wane, starting to slow down. These characters are they haven't really been meta for a few months now. And I know that seems like not a long time, but by the time we get an Avengers update, let's say it's next year for the anniversary, because you know how they love to do Avengers stuff for the anniversary, that would basically mark a year that Iron Man is not really in the meta. So I could definitely see that. For some of you, that may be too soon, and you could definitely disagree with me, but that's certainly something I see on the horizon. Speaking of Team Up collection, and speaking of swords and comic cards and CTPs and artifacts, I see 2024 as a new year and a new opportunity for the devs to add something new, some sort of new system to the game to allow us to soup up our characters. But this is actually going to be a 2-in-1 suggestion or prediction, because I also expect the devs to do something about Odin's Blessings. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, right now in the game, there's an Odin's Blessing combined chance up, and there's no other event in the game that allows you to get other premium items for free. There's no other, combine obelisks into CTPs or combine cards into P cards or anything like that, right? Combine generic artifacts into unique exclusive artifacts. That doesn't exist for any other of the semi-premium items. So I actually expect, on top of them adding some sort of new layer of RNG, some new layer of gambling to the game, I expect that they may actually remove the Enchanted Uru chest from the gambling in order to bring in something more exciting and more hype. Because let's be real, no one gambles for Odin's Blessings anymore. Nobody, right? Again, with the Odin's Blessing chance up combine event, as well as the packs that they sell now very frequently, the Odin's Blessing packs, there's just no reason to ever gamble for Odin's Blessings. So the devs probably see that, and the marketing team probably sees that as sort of oversaturation. And rather than oversaturate the game with too many garbage things to gamble on, I think that they're going to look to trim the fat a little bit, remove some of these garbage gambling sets, and then maybe introduce something new that players can gamble for. All right, so Avengers, new gambling tech, these things all very vague and not too specific. You probably want something a little more on the nose for 2024. Okay, so hear me out on this one. I bet, I'm putting it down, I'm putting 20 bucks down on the line that Jean will be dethroned in 2024. But let me be more specific. I don't think she'll be dethroned for PvP. Let me be very specific. I think she will retain her value throughout the rest of the next year, 2024. And I think it's going to be towards the end of 2024, possibly into 2025, before we see her value actually start to disintegrate and actually start to wane out of the PvP meta. But in the meantime, I certainly think she's going to be replaced in the next 6 months to a year for PvE content. And I know what you're thinking. That's kind of crazy, Alex, because she's very good for PvE content. But here's the thing. It doesn't actually take getting a universal female villain to actually be as good as Jean in PvE. It just takes a character that's cheaper than Jean and almost as good as Jean to replace her in PvE content. So even if we get a character that's, again, same typing, universal, and villain, right? But we get one that instead of being a mutant who doesn't have a lot of stages or sort of days for world boss, we get like a human, right? Or something like that, or an alien. Then you have a character that's not only almost as fast as Jean for GBR and World Boss and scores almost as high for ABX and ABL, but also has more World Boss Legend stages, on top of the fact that you don't need to build up Magneto and you don't need to finish an Epic Quest to get all of that PvE content. So you basically have a lower bar of expectations for getting Jean replaced in PvE. Now, of course, like I said, I don't think Jean is going to be replaced for PvP, but I think her value will slip once she is firmly in the PvP value slot, but no longer in the PvE value slot, because that initial investment is so much when you could just instead tier for, you know, whoever the case, like villain Captain Marvel or something like that, who does all the same things Jean does in PvE for a quarter of the price. Summer, Halloween, Christmas, April Fools. These represent the 4 seasonal uniforms and the 4 seasonal times of the year where we get these limited edition uniforms. My prediction for 2024 and beyond, fingers crossed, is that there will be no new seasonal days or time slots added to the yearly calendar. What that means is we will still get our April Fools next year in 2024, and then we'll get the summer one in August, and then we'll get the Halloween one in Halloween, and then we'll get the Christmas one. But we won't get a Valentine's Day one, we won't get a July 4th one, we won't get a Thanksgiving one, or Lunar New Year one. They will keep it to 4 per year. And frankly, in my opinion, 4 per year is more than enough. That's 8 uniforms every single year that are on a 2-week timer. And I certainly think that it's enough. I think I distinctly remember saying back in the day, and I correct me if I'm wrong here, but someone can go back and look, or if anyone remembers that has better memory than me, when they first introduced the winter uniforms, I believe it was Deadpool. They first introduced the uniforms, and I said, you know what? I don't have a problem with seasonal uniforms. The concept itself is not so bad. However, my worry was that they would release too many seasonal uniforms and that every month we would have seasonal uniforms and it would just become this circus. We're very close to that. We're very close to that circus because there are 10 updates per year. And right now, 4 of those updates, so that's 40%, 40% of the updates per year include a seasonal component. That's for me, that's my limit, right? 40% is my limit. If they go any higher than 4, I think they're really pushing the milking. And what happens if you milk too much is people get tired. People get tired of the milking. They get tired of having their nips pulled on. So hopefully the devs heed that warning from 4 years ago, back in 2019, when they introduced these uniforms. April Fool's Deadpool, so bad. And they stick to 4. Last but not least, I predict in 2024, and this is not a very bold prediction at first, because I'm going to predict a new game mode. So you're probably thinking, oh, Alex, that's so easy. They add new game modes every like 4 months. Of course they're going to add a new game mode. This is very specific now. This is very specific. And why do you think the music has changed during this video? Because I predict they are going to release a new PvEVP game mode. Let me say that again. They're going to release a new PvEVP game mode. Now, what's a PvEVP? I'm having a lot of fun saying that acronym, by the way. PvEVP means player versus environment versus player, which means Danger Room. Think of Danger Room when you think of PvEVP, because you're fighting against an AI boss, like a world boss, but you're actually competing against other players to kill the boss faster than the other players. Your team is sort of in a race against the clock, trying to kill the boss before the other team is doing the same thing live. That was the only sort of live PvP we've had in years. Danger Room was a mixed bag of good and bad, and it certainly didn't keep up with the meta, because as soon as Pierce was introduced, Danger Room just became a one-shot fiesta, and it was garbage, and it was, you know, closed down less than 6 months after Pierce was introduced. But I think the devs closed it down because they were going back to the drawing board. That is my prediction. And my prediction is that they're going to bring back the sort of Danger Room. They might not call it Danger Room. They might call it something completely different. But I feel like they're going to bring back that sort of that PvE style PvP racing game mode that we had with Danger Room, where maybe you have to defeat a certain number of bosses. It's like a wave mode. So you have to defeat these 5 random bosses faster than the other team defeats 5 random bosses. And, you know, each player is like, whatever. Let's just say off the top of my head, each team is 3 players, so it's a 3v3. And each player brings in 3 different DPSs, so there's no supports or leaderships. And then based on the boss, you have to switch to different characters because the different bosses will have different defenses and different interactions that make them take more or less damage from certain enemies. Like, you know, this boss takes only damage from villains, this boss takes only damage from, you know, mutant heroes, or whatever the case may be. I think they're going to introduce something like that. I think we haven't seen the last of a Danger Room-esque game mode. So those are my top 5 predictions for 2024 in Marvel Future Fight. Hit me up down below in the comments, on Discord, on Twitter, on Patreon with your suggestions, your predictions for 2024. Let's see who has more right. Thank you so much for watching. Smash the like button, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.